Welcome to the Stories That Sparkle podcast. I'm Hella Rader, and today's topic is grief. And to make sure that we cover that well, I sat down with Debra, who is a grief tender. So she works with people through all kinds of grief. If you need help with your grief, she's the woman for you. Grief may sound like a heavy thing, but when you hear Debra talk about it, it's really a thing of beauty. She's also a book midwife. I worked with her for a year and a half to write my memoir. So we met every week on Zoom to dig into the stories that I had to tell. She helped me get to my first draft. So woohoo, that was pretty awesome. So so Debra is many, many things, but to me, she's a really dear friend and I just love her to bits and pieces. We originally recorded this conversation, or a different conversation, I should say, during the Discoball Tour, which is episode. So this would be the 9th conversation of the tour and the 3rd that I had in Santa Fe, and we decided to re-record it about something else. We talk a little bit more about that in this episode at the beginning, so hang out, chill out, and don't panic, y'all, because the topic is grief. It's actually full of joy, full of light, full of hope. So I invite you to get comfortable, sit back, and listen in. I'm Hella Rader. With a good sense of humor, an open heart, and an open mind, I love to explore the very human complexities in others and in myself. That's why I created a space for women you have never heard of and could easily pass on the street to share in their own voices the intricacies of starting over in life, building community, inhabiting their bodies, and more. Welcome to our Discoball, the stories that sparkle. Hi, Debra. How are you?
Good. So good to see you.
Good to see you. Well, I'm going to hit record on all the places.
Recording in progress.
It's funny when I just heard that recording in progress, it reminded me of all of our sessions that you and I had for like a year and a half on Zoom while I was writing my book. So it was just like a flashback, like recording in session. I was like, oh my gosh.
Those were amazing. Those were amazing times because you really dedicated yourself to writing your book, and it's finished, and hopefully soon it'll be out in the world.
Yep, that's what 2026 is all about, my friend. So, well, hey, y'all, we're here on Zoom, not in Santa Fe. Debra, however, is in Santa Fe, and I'm in New York. So go figure. It's a fabulous phenomenon of modern technology. It's also New Year's Day, which is like, I couldn't think of a better way to start the new year, by the way, than with you doing this. So thank you. It's amazing.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And just for a little bit of context, y'all, I did see Debra in September during the Discoball Tour. We recorded a conversation then and decided after the fact that, it just wasn't time for that conversation to be out there. It's something that's really important to me that I say to everyone I record with is if this isn't the right time, it's not the time. So we won't put it out there. And interestingly, we were just chatting. I was catching Debra up on the fact that I started this docu-series on YouTube and ventured into some territory around being a survivor. And part of that story happened very real way. While I lived in Santa Fe, it's kind of where it all really came to a head, if you will. And I've written about it. I've talked about it. It's not like it's not out there in the public domain, a lot of that story. But I went and visited all 3 places I lived in Santa Fe, and I was going to make a whole video out of it. And once I started cutting that footage, I'm like, nope.
And there's something about Santa Fe, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, your experience here, and it was my experience here. So Santa Fe is like a character in this as well.
There was something about the combination of having the video on top of it all. It was just too much. I'm like, nope, can't do it. I can't hold the space for it. I was like, you know what? I'm going to apply the same kind of care I would give to someone else to myself. So I'm not doing it. Not going to put it out there quite yet. So thank you for being an example of care. So appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, we are both taking care of ourselves.
That's right.
My story maybe it'll come out someday. But I was so excited about recording that actually. But then I realized, oh, it's just not, I'm not ready for it to be met in the world. And I have my own healing, deep healing to still do around that topic. So yay, we get to
Yeah.
meet
I
again.
know, I know. I'm like, well, selfishly, I'm like, this makes me happy because I'm like, I get to do this twice. Woohoo. So, and it was also, I have to say, a real thrill for me to meet you in person because, like I said, we worked together on Zoom like this for a long time, and I always joke, Deborah knows all the stories more than most people know. So, so it was a real privilege and honor to be with you in person. So I'm glad to be able to do this with you today. So yay! More time with Deborah
Yay.
is always a good thing in my book. So.
Well, you know, I love you, and it was quite amazing to see you in the flesh. So,
Yeah, that was
yeah,
fun. Well, we'll do it again. Well, that will happen again no matter what. So I'll be back. So,
great. Or maybe
yay.
I'll be on the East Coast.
That's right. One way or another, we're going to hang out again in person. But today we're going to talk about your work with grief. And I mean, that's a big topic, obviously. So my thought was, if it feels good to you, I just kind of like to enter into that in terms of like how did working with grief and working with other people's grief and helping them work with their own grief, where would you say that did that begin? Like, did that have a distinct moment where that was like something you felt led to work with or in, or was it a gradual process?
Well, you know, I'm a really like, I think my middle name could be Grievy because I have been grieving since I was very, very young. And, you know, just I had a lot of stress and a lot of sort of emotional abuse growing up. So, of course, when you're really young, you can't identify what that is. But I will say that, you know, my parents took me to a psychiatrist, I believe, Dr. Apfel. I remember his name. I could see his office. I have this whole scenario and this whole story in my memoir that I'm, you know, writing now. And they put me on Ritalin when I was 6. So it just, I wasn't acting out, but I was extremely hyper. And so, I mean, I don't have to get into all the, you know, the details there, but it was hard. And I was never in touch with my feelings growing up, except that I felt sad. I felt sad. And yeah, and then I, you know, started like eating too much. And, you know, it was just like any ways to sort of stuff those feelings down. So I think the moment of my change was, or opening up to my own grief, and then the possibility of working with others, they can't, it hit at the same time.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I had been in therapy, um, and I guess I went into therapy right after my dad died. Oh my God. I mean, he died in 1979. It's a long time ago. And I think it was 26, and I went into therapy. But anyway, it was, I was at NYU. I lived in New York City, and I, I owned, I cooked professionally for a while, and then I owned an event planning business for 10 years. And it was during that time with the event planning business that I was in NYU for some conference, and I heard Alana Rubenfeld, who was the first person, a woman, to put the body, the mind together in a therapeutic sense. She put this together back in the, you know, the late 70s. She studied with Fritz Perls, the father of Gestalt therapy. She studied with Moshe Feldenkrais from the Feldenkrais work. And she put it all together in something called Rubenfeld synergy. Anyway, she was speaking about some kind of healing at this conference, and something like a jolt just went through me. And I, rushed up to her after, she came off the stage, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to find out more about this. And one thing led to the next, and I studied with her for a number of years. And I became a Rubenfeld synergist. The work was incredible for my own healing. And, but of course, I learned how to work with others. So that was the very, very beginning of, and this was before like the word somatic was you know, such a big word that it is now. I mean, she was at the very, very, very forefront of this. So I've been working with my own body and my own traumas in a very different way. And since then, and it's continued over the years, like, my own deep work. And because I understand what it takes, and I understand the whole process of like, wow, I'm not even in touch with that. And how do we get there? It's always through the body. The body holds it all. I know a lot of people understand this, and a lot of people are like, what do you mean?
I mean, I remember when we were working together and you're like, no, there's more layers underneath that. Like, where is that in your body? And I was like, I don't know what she's talking about. What is she
And I
saying?
and I think that's like a perfect segue just into I work because I've been doing this for 30 something years, and I work with my memoir and nonfiction book clients almost the same way that I work with my grief clients, meaning it's always what's happening in the body and what is underneath the underneath. What is not being said. And it's not easy. It's not easy for all of us, right? To just say, oh, this is what's underneath. It takes sort of digging and, unearthing what the feelings are and what the experiences are. And I say, I might have said to you, we're doing this, and, really good to have some support, a therapist, somebody to talk to along the way, because stuff comes up.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
No, I mean, if I'm really glad I had, you did say that at the time. Like, I'm glad I had a community around me to support me in the process of that because it was intensive work ultimately. Yeah. Hmm.
it is, right? And a lot of grief comes up. So, yeah, I mean, I love to sort of work between both worlds. And, my own work, my own personal work is not over. I mean, I went on and I've studied with Ruby Gibson, the founder of somatic archaeology. I mean, I've been studying with her forever, and I just did another year with her to go even deeper into my own healing because there are just still things after all this time that are hidden. And I'm like, I am ready to just see it all. So, and feel it all. But, of course, it's tempered and it comes in bits that the body and the psyche can really understand. So I think I'll always be looking at my own healing. This makes me I have to do my own work, right? If I'm not doing my own work, what kind of book coach am I? Because I work so deep with clients that I'll be on a trajectory of, digging and somatic archaeology, right? Somatic, the body, archaeology, digging. In its purest form, the somatic archaeology it's a kin-centric model of working. So it works with one of the Native American medicine wheels. That's just in its purest form, and just looking at the directions and then looking at where our emotions fit into the wheel. But in a simple sense, it's just digging and being with the body and learning certain breath work to allow feelings and things that we don't even know. Maybe we just get a flash of an image or something and we follow that. And the body leads us to, eventually to freedom.
I'm just like sitting here thinking, like, I mean, grief is so intense. And like, the association in my mind is always like sad, depressing, heavy, right? Which it is and can be. So how do you work with that in the way that you do, and the amount of time that you spend working in that kind of place, right, with others and yourself? How do you hold that without it sort of crushing you? I'm just picturing, like, wow, if I was working with grief that intensely, I would be afraid of getting crushed by it.
And we can
Mm.
get crushed by it. And I have been in a place where I actually have been crushed by it because for me, it started to become an identity. Like, I'm a great griever. I'm like, I am such a great sufferer. I can like go to Harvard, right, and teach suffering. And not that anybody would sign up for that class, but we are all suffering in some ways, especially in these days. So I've learned that the way to carry grief, to feel grief, to be with it, to really allow it, is to also find joy, to beauty. I sort of renamed myself a wild beauty forager. And that's part of my everyday practice, to let in the beauty, take it into my sphere, into my vision, into my heart. And what does that mean? It could even mean starting early in the morning when it's sunny day and lifting the shades and going, wow, as a ritual. I let the sun come in today. So um, there's a poem that I love by Sarah Ryan. She's one of my favorite poets. She writes beautifully about grief. And it goes, if grief were a bird, I would never cage it.
Oh, wow.
Grief were a forest, I would never cut it down. If grief were, if grief was a winding river, I would never block its flow. So treat grief as you would treat every other wild, free, wise, beautiful thing. Just let it be.
Huh. So almost like the finding the beauty in the grief or of grief.
Allowing ourselves to grieve and not cover it up.
Hmm.
We get into these dilemmas because we cover it up. We're not supposed to, you know, we're not supposed to grieve for too long and grief is, it has its own life. Grief has its own, trajectory. And, it's not like we grieve for 2 weeks and it's over. And it depends on the loss and our coping skills. And this is what, we have to all learn how to be with our grief, allow it, allow its grief language to just move through us, whether it's, tears, so weeping or screaming or crying or pounding or writing or, however we move these intense feelings. I mean, grief is equated with how much we love and how much
Oh,
we loved. Like I work a lot now with people who have lost their companion animals. And I have to tell you, the loss of my two dogs was the worst for me. my little Lily, who died in 2009. She was my soul dog with me for for, yeah, with me for 17 and a half years. I adopted her in New York City um, at the ASPCA, and then we moved to Santa Fe. And so she died at 18. And my other little soul dog, Frida Hart, it was just the end of December was 3 years that she's gone. And those losses were the biggest losses that I felt and the hardest to get over. So a lot of animal people that I know, this is the same thing with them because it's such a pure kind of love with our animals. And they're sort of our safety. They're just, we feel safe with them. And and sometimes they're the only ones that hold that relationship with us.
In rewatching my travel via my video I shot, what really kicked off what was hardest for me in coming back to Santa Fe was I was more upset. Like all the other things that had happened there were bouncing around, but what really got me was the fact that that's where I got Harley, my little Morky that you remember from our
Oh,
sessions, and how much he loved it there and the trails and going hiking with him. And that's actually what was got me crying, not everything else about Santa Fe. Like, there was some nerves about going back there, but it was really more like the emotional heart of what I felt was about around him,
hmm.
not so much other things, which I also thought was, since you say that, it was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I mean, he was, there for, he saw the whole thing, like he saw it all, but he was like he was my outlet to like leave the house and like go on the trails. Like he was always with me for all of that. So yeah.
And he was loving you.
Yeah.
And yes, I remember him in the background for, with all of our sessions. And
Yeah.
he was an adorable little one.
Yeah, he was. So I mean, I understand that. Yeah. So I love that you have moved into working with others, with other people over the loss of their animals. I mean, that's,
It's so close to my heart.
mm-hmm.
I've also worked with some veterinarians and some vet techs and stuff. And this is one of my um, passions as well. I mean, I feel like I'm really here. One of the things, anyway, to normalize grief and especially normalize grief around pet loss, animal companion loss. Whether someone has a donkey, a ferret, a dog, a cat, a horse, that love is just so pure. I feel passionate too about working with veterinarians because, and the vet techs, because around euthanasia. There's so much euthanasia guilt, and there's euthanasia guilt with the guardians of the animals, and certainly with the veterinarians and vet techs. So that's an area that I'm getting more. I'm getting busy in.
You do a lot. You combine, I mean, you're a writer, obviously, yourself. Tell me more about that, please. The book that
The Chimpanzee Chronicles,
that's right, the Chimpanzee Chronicles.
stories of heartbreak and hope from behind the bars. It's an anthology.
Right,
And
right.
I was working with 25 people from around the world. And the book is about chimpanzees and grief. It was my grief work and my many years of my own personal suffering that I was so attracted to tell chimpanzee stories.
That's
So
amazing. I love this. That's incredible.
the book took me 13 years because my mom had Alzheimer's and I was traveling to another, state, and I had some health issues come up, and it took time because out of the 25 writers, I think 23 were not really used to writing, let's say. So stories. And I was just like trying as best I can to go underneath the underneath the underneath with those beautiful people. And the book has gone on. I thought, oh my God, it's taking so long, but it's still relevant today. And although things have changed for the better for chimps, but there are still many, many chimps in peril. But the book went on. I self-published because there was no way I could meet a publisher's demands for time. And the book went on to win 15 national awards.
It's
So
incredible.
that's really cool. Yeah, and Jane Goodall was an early mentor of mine when I just got the idea, and I met her twice, and the second time was in at a chimpanzee conference in I can't remember where it was. It was at some zoo in the middle of the country,
Right.
and yeah, she was really behind me and the stories, and just like go for it, Deborah.
That is
So
really, I think, for me, that's just an inspiration. I just had a conversation that came out last week with someone who went to school in her 70s, and just her perseverance to keep going and ask for scholarships and this and student loan, all the things to make it possible. And like some things just take their time, but is it's like, am I willing to just stick it out and keep going? And I think it's just, to me, it's an incredible story. Like the book itself, but also the story of being willing to persevere through it and then being that passionate about it to
there
see
was
it
no,
through.
I had no choice in a way because I made a promise. Um, it's a long story, and how can I say this in like three sentences? I I hired a baby chimp when I owned the event planning business. I hired a baby chimp for a client's birthday party. Of course, I was there. I held the chimp the most time because I just was like pushing my way in because I've always loved primates. I've always loved great apes, really, specifically chimps and gorillas, and then I hired this little baby, 2 years old, Casey. Okay, it was great. Years later, I got very ill, and that's a long story in and of itself. And I became allergic to like everyday products, and it was wild. And I then became homeless. And so, like I said, that's a whole nother story. But during that time, I was like, oh, having these dreams, and chimps would come to me in my dreams. When I got into a safe place finally, and my dog sometimes went with my mom, or I found other people to take my dog, and I would visit with her. But if while I was in and out of my car, I couldn't keep the dog. But anyway, during that time, all these dreams. So I'm in a safe place, and then had another dream, and then I'm like, oh, I remember I hired Casey.
Hmm.
I ran to the back closet and I took out, on the upper shelf, I had a cardboard box and I had pictures of Casey. And I started crying. I mean, I broke out in like, I was heaving. And I realized that I was part of the problem
Wow.
because of everything that I had found out about chimps. And, chimps, all the abuse that they were going through in our own country and and outside of Santa Fe, down in Alamogordo, New Mexico, with the Air Force. So that was it. I made a promise to Casey in that moment that I will do whatever I can to be part of the solution. So that's
Wow.
why I never gave up.
Wow. Yeah. So I'm hearing in there like having a why. What's my why outside of not just quote unquote me? Not that I'm not a good enough why, but you know what I mean? Like, what's my why that's also going to sustain me when it gets hard?
It's like, how do we all use our grief and turn it into beauty? Do
Mm.
something really, positive and beautiful with it. So, Um, so yay to all of us that are,
Yay, right?
yeah.
So what does it look like when you work with someone? Like how does that generally go? Like,
Okay.
obviously it's going to be, I'm sure, different for, but for each person or depending on the situation, but is a general concept, like how does that flow start, or like how does that work for you?
Really, it really depends on the work they've done in the world and what they're open to. But often I have people really come into their bodies and breathe. Often I'll do a little grief, well, a little meditation. And then many times I've invited the pet that has gone on to join us. And sometimes it's absolute like wow and a miracle that the animal has literally come through. And then, I sort of step back out
Hmm.
and I let, in some of the instances, I let the dog or the cat or whatever animal it is really be in conversation with person who's grieving their loss. So, and then, I talk about all different kinds of rituals that they can continue doing. And sometimes it's just one session, sometimes it's a series of sessions, but it's about connecting to their own heart, the heart of their animal. And often, other times, it's really about euthanasia grief. And I know that from my own um, two very, very different um, situations with euthanasia. Very, very, very good one with my first dog, and a really not so good one with my second dog. So I feel like I'm in a really good position to, to be with whatever is arising around that. And there's a lot of euthanasia grief. So, and now I'm like, I've studied with Francis Weller, who is a grief therapist. Was in his every week, every Wednesday convivium for, I don't know, like 2.5 years. And then I did his um, 6 month, I think it was, a grief ritual leadership with him. So, and then I went last year to Utah to an amazing 3-day grief ritual with some of the grief tenders that have been studying with Francis for many years. And it was amazing. And I really got to see the importance of not only grieving by ourselves, but also what it means to grieve in community. And I'm really, really excited about that work for myself. And I'm talking to some friends, and we may be offering a 2-day in person, not on Zoom, in person grief ritual in Santa Fe. And sometime over the summer or early fall of this, yeah, it's this year.
I know, it's that
And
wild.
and then in 18 days, well, January 18th, I'm doing with a friend who's a death doula. We're doing a Zoom 2-hour grief ritual. Um, so it'll be a grief circle, and we'll have poetry and um, sharing and writing, time for writing, and then we'll all do a ritual together. I mean, what's great about Zoom is that people can come from all over the world and be together, and you're not alone, with grief. At some point, it's really, really important to be with others.
I can relate to that, having now had the experience of being willing to grieve in the context of community. But I think, to your point, demystifying grief first and foremost as a being, it's not a bad thing. I think there's a culturally, societal, it's not bad, but like, let's not talk about that. It's not fun. It's, depressing, whatever. But then also this idea is like, if I'm gonna grieve, it has to be in isolation, by myself. I can't bring that, And I remember times when I'm like, oh, I don't want to be the lady who like brings the sad into the situation, So having time set aside where, everyone's there collectively to hold space for each other to grieve, like that by design, I think is so beautiful.
And bringing sad into the situation can be a really great thing. We live in such a grief and death phobic culture. Here in
Yeah.
the Western world, it's like just tuck it away, tuck it away. So, so I mean, I'm always like inviting that and just let's just be with what is and let's bring it up because that's the only way that it's going to move through. I'm going to do a number of Zooms this year, Zoom grief writing.
Ooh.
And then I may be doing with a friend or myself, I'm not sure, Francis Weller's The Six Gates of Grief. It's about looking at grief from so many different aspects. The first gate is everything we love, we are going to lose.
Oof.
Everything we love, we are going to lose. It could be people, places, relationships, health, you know, pets, whatever it is, everything we love, we're eventually going to lose, including our own deaths. And the second gate is the parts of us that have not known love. Those are sort of like the outcast parts of ourselves, the parts that we just don't want to deal with. So, what's that grief about? And then the sorrows of the world. Oh my God, this is like huge for all of us right now. All of us, I'll say, that are awake. So we're grieving over the natural world, the ecological grief. We're grieving over here in this country losing our democracy, and I won't even go there. But anyway, so that would be the sorrows of the world. And then the fourth gate is what did we expect and did not get?
Ooh.
So connections, relationships, what about our own purpose?
Oh,
Yeah.
that's incredible. I had never, I mean, I've understood like any kind of change has grief, when even if it's a good change, like you get the new job and you're, but there's still a loss, like leaving the other job or whatever, that's just a really basic example. So even when it's a good change of circumstance, it still has grief with it. But I'd never thought about, um, not getting something that I was expecting or hoping for and having
Yeah.
grief attached to not getting that thing. I'd never thought of grief in that context. So that's really fascinating.
Yeah. And then the fifth gate is ancestral grief. You know, what's happened in our own bloodlines, in our own lineages, and what about our ancestors' grief, and our disconnection from ancestors or even our families in this life. And then he had five for a long time, and then he added a sixth one not too long ago, and that's the harms we have done. So grief over the harms that we have caused, right? Either directly or through complicity in systems of supremacy or whatever. So, yeah, it's really good there's so much, there are all these different kinds of grief that we're carrying. And I feel like it's like really important to hone in on each of these. So, maybe do like a week at a time, a 6-week class. I'm actually, I've been thinking about what I'm going to do with that, but I think those gates are really important. I've learned so much from Francis Weller, and he's really very well known now. And I mean, he did a number of things with Anderson Cooper, you know,
Mm-hmm.
CNN, and we can't have enough grief tenders out in the world. because we're all carrying so much.
Yeah, it's fascinating that you say that because I think just in the last, I don't know, year and a half or so, just different people I've talked to, some I know very well, some not so, just kind of an eclectic collection of people, random people who at different points have said, I really want to work with grief and work with others on grief. And I was like, what? Like, what's happening? It's fascinating you say that because just anecdotally, I've observed that from very sometimes unlikely places of people suddenly wanting to work in this, like somehow having gone through an immense amount of grief of their own over something specific has led them to this place of now wanting to work with others, specifically around grief.
It reminds me, what you're saying. There's a poem that I absolutely love by Jan Richardson. The poem is, "Let us agree for now that we will not say the breaking makes us stronger, or that is better to have this pain than to have done without this love. Let us promise we will not tell ourselves time will heal the wound." Oh, how often we hear that. When every day our waking opens it anew. Perhaps for now it can be enough to simply marvel at the mystery of how a heart so broken can go on beating, as if it were made for precisely this, as if it knows the only cure for love is more of it.
Mm, wow. That's beautiful. As you were reading that, what came to mind is kind of where we had started, which is, in that trip to Santa Fe, and I went to each place I lived in.
Mm.
And I was just watching the video of me doing that and me talking about it in real time. And I remember in that sort of monologue, whatever, free associated processing, whatever you want to call it, I was having this moment of like, oh, that I don't even remember her, the woman who was in that situation, who, you know,
Mm.
and that was what, like 15, 16 years ago, roughly. I'm like, I cannot recall her. I mean, I can if I try really hard, but I cannot recall her. And I also have deep compassion and care and love for her, but I'm so removed from her now. That's not my reality today in any way, shape, or form. So it was like, I think now that you read that, for me, it feels like, oh, there's some grief around losing her. Like, if that makes any sense. Like, I've done so much work. That's why I think it surprised me that this content was so hard for me to put out there. I'm like, I've done so much work around this. I've talked about it. I've done this. I've done that. But clearly, what I'm recognizing now is that there's some grief of like losing that part of me which is a good thing in some ways, but still like I not wanting to live in that story, but also is a part of me, but it's a part that is different now. It's lost. So anyway, it's just I'm piecing this together in real time as you're talking. I'm hearing all of this and that poem. I'm like, right, that makes a lot of sense now.
It's just going to take time to just piece it all together, because who you were back then, right?
Right,
You're not that person anymore.
right.
There was some really hard things.
Yeah. And I'm like,
Really.
oh, there's a balance between like moving on and versus glossing over versus feeling it all the time versus, right? Like, and it sort of alternates, but that's what's so beautiful about what you're saying in terms of, and that poem specifically addressing, like, let's not say, oh, time heals all things, like, it's okay. It's going to keep coming up in different ways. Different parts of that are going to reemerge as you're ready or it's time or whatever. And that's okay too. Like there's nothing wrong here.
There's nothing wrong there. Yeah, it's sort of like that there's like hope in
Hmm.
in grief. things are going to change. The more we are with something, the more we allow ourselves to feel something really hard, there's hope sort of stitched in there, right? Because may not may not be able to identify it immediately, but it's just like because things are changing. There'll be something else that you don't even know yet. And that's where it's sort of like hidden in grief, because people don't really talk about hope in grief a lot, but I've been thinking about that.
No, that's what's so
Um,
incredible to me. Go ahead. Yeah, keep going. Cause I'm like, wow. Like between the beauty forager, right? The joy and now the hope, bringing that into like that grief really has all of those in it as well, which I think is not something we often, I mean, I certainly don't usually associate with grief.
we talk about like um, death, and we're talking about death, but we're talking about life at the same time. Um, going back over memories and what everything was, in the past, which is life. And then you bring life to your own feelings in allowing all the grief to move through you and out of you. And then where does it go, right? How do you change? And that's where I think hope just sort of eternally sort of moves through the grief. Really, grief is talking about life, and and life brings with it hope. I talked to somebody who was carrying grief for years and years and years and could never get over the loss of her pet. And there was no way that I was going to bring hope in or anything. It was just about, you know, working with what is there and having them find safety and almost joy in a connection of their grief.
Hmm.
So I might bring in a little beauty in there. You know what I'm saying? Like, doesn't feel like it's joy. And not every joy is like you're standing on the roof screaming, happy thoughts.
Right,
It's like
right.
it just sort of creeps in as well. But you have to, and I've heard Francis Weller say so many times that really to be an adult, one has to hold grief and hold beauty in the same hand. I mean, at the same time.
Wow. So, how do you care for yourself as you're giving all this care and holding all this? Like, how do you care for yourself as you're holding all this space for others to experience their grief, sometimes for the first time, maybe ever, or certainly at this deeper level? So, how do you navigate that within your own self?
It's such a good question. And sometimes it's really hard, because one learns how to not fully take it in to their own, as a grief practitioner, not to fully take it in, but sometimes you can't help it. You're just like, oh, you know what that feels like. And um, so it's always about, after sessions, about me breathing. Sometimes I'll literally take in my own space because almost all my work now is on Zoom. COVID changed everything, and it's sort of cool because I can have clients all over the world. But I'm looking to my right because I have some sage over there. So I might, sage myself and do a little session, a little somatic archaeology session with myself where I'm really feeling my feet in the ground and connecting to spirit as well, and sort of praying, just releasing anything that is not, or everything that's not mine. And yeah, sometimes I'll just sit down with a piping hot cup of tea, but I need to decompress.
Hmm.
Sometimes I need to do a little writing. So it really depends on, on the session. And if I have a couple of sessions back to back, um, it's especially important to do that. And there have been times that I'm like off and running, I'm doing something else, and then I'm, working on books with clients, and I just don't have the time, and it affects me. So, and then a couple of days later, I'm like, uh-oh, it's always important to come back and do cleansing.
Right.
Even some breath work, some fire breaths, and letting out what has, built up inside, and just, releasing. The key is remembering that the toolbox even exists.
Right. Right.
If we're really incredibly busy or traveling, or, whatever it is. So, but
Yeah.
really self-care is the utmost of, of importance as we hold a lot for our clients. And the same for me, even with bookwork.
Right.
So I'm always inviting the deeper stories, and to look like what else is not being said, and rarely does someone do I get a book client that it's just like all there, you know. Even myself, in writing my own memoir, I need somebody like myself to work with, because it's like, oh my God, 6 months later, I completely forgot about that. That has to go in. So,
Right.
um, yeah, it's all a process. But if we allow our bodies to lead the way, and then we tend our bodies afterwards, and we're tending not only our bodies, but our psyches as well. So
Mm.
we're just not carrying the full load of, we can carry the caring. Yeah, we can carry the love, we can carry the care, but we don't want to carry like all the intense, hard stuff. We don't want to take that on as our own.
Right.
I had to learn that.
Right. Well, I just have to say you have a real gift. I mean,
Oh,
it's a real gift. Like it was my first experience with somatic anything that felt, and because you made it feel so safe, I was willing to go there. I guess is the best way to put it. So it's a real gift to me that you have. Like you just have that gift.
thank you. And working with you was phenomenal for me. I loved you from the get-go.
We were always having a hoot, weren't we?
And yeah, I mean, you show up in such a in a profound way. You show up for yourself.
Thank you. Oh,
And here we go into the new year.
I know. So what do you, so you mentioned that on the 18th that you're doing,
A friend of mine who's a death doula, Steph Wilson, and I are doing a 2 hour grief ritual. It's a Sunday, so we're going to go from like 11 to 1. And so people can bring any grief that they're feeling, and just come and join us, and not feel so alone.
right. So
Yeah.
that sounds like a great, like if someone's, who might be listening is sitting with some things that they're like, I don't know, that might be a good entry point to explore, to begin an exploration, or at least be with others in a moment to do a little bit of work around the grief they're
Yeah, this is
feeling.
this is open for all those different
Yeah,
gates of grief that
right.
we talked about a few minutes ago.
Sounds
Go
like a
ahead.
great opportunity for especially at the beginning of the year to, at least access whatever that could be. And who knows what that might reveal, at least be in community around it. So,
Right, and all kinds of grief. And then I'll be offering lots of different Zooms throughout the year, on different kinds of grief. So especially writing and grief writing, and pet loss.
right.
So
So before we close, if there was one thing, just one tool for that person who's listening, who isn't sure they're grieving anything, um, could come to thing on the 18th. But let's just say they're listening and they're like, what would be the one thing you could say, okay, try this one thing and, it'll might help show you something to be able to go to the next place after that.
Oh, there are so many ways to enter into that, but um, one good way is just to sit down, bring out your journal, bring out a, piece of a pad and a pen, and just sit down and start with a writing prompt. How about this? I wish someone would ask me.
Mm.
Or another prompt could be, it was my fault. And a third, maybe I remember. And sit down, pick one or two, put the clock on for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever. And then start writing, write the prompt, start writing, don't pick up your pen. If you have to write the prompt over 20 times, you will. Trust me, it will come. It's very important that you do this with a pen. So, in hand. So there's the whole proprioceptive thing with writing. So you don't want to do this on the computer. And just see what comes up. And then honor your feelings, whatever arises. Writing like this is a very powerful way to get in touch with some things that need to be expressed, need to be moved out and through the body, or out of the body, sort of, in a way.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. That's great. That's a great entry point for someone to at least begin.
And it doesn't really move it out of the body. That's not the work that does, but it moves it out into those feelings, out into the present and out into the air in the ethers, and moves it that way, and helps then, and that allows you then to go deeper.
Right. To even know what you're looking at or working with or trying,
Yeah.
maybe want to look at more and work on with someone like yourself and get some help for that. So yeah, I think that was, for me for sure, like so shut down that I was like, I'm fine. And I'm like, no, I mean, I'm okay, but I'm not fine. So like, that process of unearthing it, now I even know what I might want to work on should I decide to do that, so it's a great
Yeah, we
place.
carry so much. And like I said earlier, in our Western culture, we're so shut down around grief. We don't allow ourselves the full expression. And that eventually, I mean, that affects our bodies in a big way, in a big way. And it comes out in all sorts of symptoms and, all sorts of oives in the body. Oh God, yeah. I mean, for me, it did. There are a lot of things that happened for me, pushing down so much grief that, and anger too, that something has to give. So I hope everybody can step into the new year in a grievy way, and at the same time, look around and take in the beauty. You don't have to look far.
I'm hearing like, the work you're doing is making space, like creating some space so that more beauty can come in and then more joy. And then off the back of all of that hope. So,
And holding it, like holding them at the same time. Like
mm,
it's okay to grieve. And wow, there's a poem by Mark Nepo. Oh, I don't remember it, but it's something like, everything is so beautiful and I'm feeling sad. And he goes on, and everything else that he wrote in that, everything is so beautiful, and I am feeling sad. And that's it, right there. That's it. And sometimes people can't get it right away. I didn't get it right away. It has taken a long time for me to really, grok what that truly means, and then I go out and have these experiences, right? And it doesn't have to be in the beginning, it had to be something big. What does that mean? Take in the beauty. Okay, do I have to go like up in the mountains and whatever? No. Yes, maybe in the beginning, but then it's just like, how do you just take in the beauty of whatever it is, something mundane.
Hmm.
I had a manicure.
I
I
saw
love,
that. Actually, I
I
noticed
love,
that.
I love the colors. Oh, they look really beautiful. I love winter white. It makes me feel somehow this winter white makes me feel so delicious, as mundane as that.
Hmm.
And as looking at a piece of art, having a deep conversation. This to me today, you and I, this is beautiful. This is beauty here in being able to just go to the depths that we have. And, so it's like explore beauty in your own way, but it's so important to do both.
I'm leaving this conversation with this idea, with this feeling of don't limit what grief is, but also what beauty can be, because it's the fullness of it. It's like the joy and the sorrow all at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how exciting to really be able to explore that. Give yourself the permission to feel your sorrows
Mm.
and then to feel beauty and see what you come up with.
I love this. I love this. The beauty is just like you had said, the hope is stitched in there. The beauty is a through line in all of it. And then therefore the joy. So it's really inspiring. Thank you.
I just was, for some reason, thinking like when we lose a pet, we don't know if we're going to get another pet. I have not gotten another dog since my little Frida Hart died. And it took me 10 years after Lily died to adopt an elder, Frida, and then we'll see. But there's a hope in that. There's just like, you know, will that death then bring more love in another way?
Hmm.
And there's hope in my heart for more love, more love.
Oh, I love that. Well, that's a perfect place to finish. More love.
And I love you.
And I love you. Oh my goodness, Debra, so much. Well, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your New Year's Day.
You as well.
Thank you. And I will be y'all, I'm going to put up all the links to all the things Debra does. You can work with her from anywhere, literally anywhere, because she will work with you on Zoom, whether you're writing your book, your memoir, a nonfiction memoir, or you want to do some grief work. She is your person. And that's for any kind of grief, as we talked about, which I think is also amazing. Like, it doesn't have to be this one vertical of things that we assume grief is about. So thank you, Debra. Really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you for this beautiful time together and this conversation. And I wish you so many beautiful things in this year to come.
Thank you. Oh, I love you.
Love you too. Bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you for listening to The Stories That Sparkle, a space I created for women to share in their own voices the intricacies of their stories. And another huge, just ginormous, big, gigondo thank you to Debra. not only for joining me on New Year's Day to record this conversation, not only for joining me in September to record our first conversation, but mostly because she was willing to tell me, you know what, I don't want that out there. So thank you, Debra. I so appreciate you. That care that you showed to yourself made it possible for me to show the same kind of care to myself. So, woohoo! That's how it gets better, y'all. Together, we get better. I mean, it's amazing. Anyway, if you want to work with Debra, I've put all the links to all the things Debra in the show notes. You can get her book, The Chimpanzee Chronicles. You can sign up to work with her as a grief tender. She can help you unlock the grief, whatever the grief may be, whatever it may be about. If you are writing your memoir, you can work with her. She's an amazing book midwife, and she will help you with lots of love and care get to your first draft. If that's what you want to do, she will get you there, I promise. And she will help you do it in the most loving, caring way you can ever imagine. So, having said all that, if you're enjoying the Stories That Sparkle podcast, do me one small favor, pass it on to 2 friends, just 2, and invite them to download, listen, follow, subscribe, like, share, all the things. And if you have a story you want to share or a topic you'd like me to cover in an episode of the podcast, just drop me a line to hellarader@substack.com, because together we bring light into dark places.